We are back at it once again, brothers and sisters. Another thinking session with your brother, C. Fleming, the philosopher librarian, the people's librarian. Both at the same time. You know how we get it. Well, it's good to be back once again. You know, I try to be more consistent with these streams and all of that good stuff, man. But look, I'm grown, brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm still working. You know what I'm saying? I still got family to take care of and all that good stuff. So we try our best to schedule these streams and try to be more intentional with them, especially for the trajectory that I'm planning on going. So that's just going to take a little bit more discipline for myself overall, whether getting up earlier than everybody or staying up later. In this case, staying up a little bit later than everybody, and it's a weekend, but it's all good. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? So, I'm still chipping at my book, Confronting and Defeating the Imposter Syndrome. I've read a few more scholarly articles. I came across a really interesting one. This one came out of the Journal of Black Psychology, and it was called Internalized Racial Oppression and Higher Education Values. The meditational role of academic locus of control among college African American men and women. And so far, this one has had, I guess, the closest perceptions of certain things that I've had, when it comes to the imposter syndrome. And an interesting thing I came across was this. When I was reading a lot of the research papers, I kind of started to understand Sorry, I have a little technical difficulties here, but I understand the difference between researchers and philosophers like myself. The role, when I read these articles, I'm often left, kind of yearning a little bit more, in the sense of, okay, you described what the problem was, but it's more descriptive than prescriptive. They don't really bring forth any necessary solutions to the problem, but they do a very good job of describing the problem, because they're just reporting the survey or reporting on the experiment that they did, and I understand that. But it came almost like an epiphany, like, oh, you know what? These are two different roles, and I just happen to be one that's going to mesh the roles of both researcher and philosopher. So all that to say, I came across this article here that I was just telling you about, and it had the closest kind of feelings that I had about the imposter syndrome, but they call it internalized racial oppression. Some of the quotes was, results indicated that a greater internalized racial oppression correlated with a lowering value of higher education and more external academic locus of control. This goes along with another paper that I had read here. From the Jungian Center for the Spiritual Sciences. and it spoke on a little bit more on the differences between, well, this one was how to internalize locus of control. And that was interesting to me because my theory right now is that, again, once one finds out or understands the purpose of the imposter syndrome vis-a-vis Black people, understanding that it is an extension of colonialism, understanding it's an extension of a weapon of oppression. But it doesn't just stop there with that understanding. Stopping there with that understanding doesn't really solve anything. And that might be controversial to say, but staying there has created a lot of careers for people who just describe the problem eloquently. But it doesn't go beyond that. It doesn't go beyond that in politics. It doesn't go beyond that in most of the leadership. My thesis is that the overall goal and purpose of these extensions and tools of oppression is to influence, namely Black people, to relinquish their internal locus of control to an external locus of control. I made a point to note that these tools are not a power. They're not a power. They are a method. And the method that they use is influence and temptation. The power comes from the agreement of the victim to take on the influences of this system. So when that is clarified, once that's really understood, that the systems of oppression, the systems of white supremacy, the systems of systemic racism, the system of all of that in and of itself doesn't have a power, but they have a method. Understand that they only have a method, and that method is influence and temptation for you to delve yourself into that paradigm. And once you have taken on that identity for yourself, another method is distraction, because you spend most of your life trying to convince I don't even know, maybe yourself or to this oppressive machine, that you are actually human. And you spend your whole life, 70 years plus, articulating or quote speaking truth to power when the power was you the whole time, and you was distracted from that power. So how does this relate to the imposter syndrome? Just like anything else that I'm describing here, it's become a social contract that one has to agree with for the effects of that influence to take root inside of the person's mind. And once it takes root inside of the person's mind, that person's mind makes that influence real. You don't become an imposter until you believe you're an imposter, that you are an imposter. Seeds might have been planted when we were in elementary school, like it was for Charles Schomburg, like it was for Malcolm X. Seeds were attempted to be planted inside of their minds to convince them that the African had no history. But in the case of a Charles Schomburg, he wasn't taking it. He wasn't taking that as truth, and that drove him on a life mission to collect African artifacts throughout the whole world for future scholars such as W.E.B. Du Bois and Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the like, to study from his materials, his library, to help them create more of the works that were used to influence the minds of our own people. See, I didn't even, like the word influence just happened to flow with that, but like that's the truth of the matter is that's what the truth of the matter is as well. Anything that is external, the only thing that he can do is influence and try to influence the internal locus of control, the internal purpose, the internal position of control that one carries. So it goes to a speech that Brother Malcolm once said, like, who taught you? Who taught you this? Who taught you to hate yourself? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips and the color of your skin so much that you want to bleach it to look like the white man? These were seeds of imposterism that was planted inside of your mind that one allowed to take root. And when it took root, it grew into a self-hatred weed that chokes the life out of the person. But here's the kicker. Just because these people had those tools of oppression does not mean that they have the key to save you from it. That's the major key. Just because they use tools to beat you down does not mean that they have the means to pick you up. And that's where a lot of these researchers and authors are missing. The solution tends to be always going back to the offender to look for some mythical reparation of mind, body, and spirit to repair the broken psyche of the Black man and woman. But that's never been the case. But it has always been in their best interest for us to think that, so we can spend the majority of our lives chasing our tail or chasing some mythical carrot on a stick that never really existed and never even had the means to free us from this internal struggle that we're dealing with. That's the kicker. When you, me, I, us, we together understand our internal locus of control, understand that we are the captains of our fate and masters of our soul, we are the leaders of our own destiny, that we are drivers, we are active and living participants in this grand scheme of life. Once that's understood, we move as adults. In this article on how to internalize the locus of control, it speaks about the external and the internal locus of control in a sense of maturity and childhood. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They have to have an external locus of control because their development, their safety, their, for them to eat and to take care of themselves and give themselves a bath and brush their teeth and all of that is dependent on outside factors because they are children. But if we were to carry, if my children were to carry on that external locus of control, that would mean that I failed them as their father. Because as they get older, they're supposed to walk more into an independent state. They're supposed to walk more into a more autonomous state. And autonomy has gotten such a negative connotation to it within these DEI circles that they call it individualism. They call it an attribute of whiteness. And it's not. When what it actually is just an attribute of a fully functioning adult that took responsibility for the things that they can't control. That's the thing. That's the method of confronting and defeating the imposter syndrome, is no longer giving your sense of control to outside forces that don't have your best interests in mind. This is how we break through the double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about. And speaking of that, and just W.E.B. Du Bois in general, and others like him, what the problem is that we have crystallized our ancestors and their wisdom to the point that whatever they have said in the past has been crystallized into truth, has been crystallized into law. So just because W.E.B. Du Bois spoke of the double consciousness, it is a forever thing that we as Black people always will have to deal with forever and ever. Amen. Just because Dr. Carter G. Woodson spoke of miseducation, that means that our people are and have been and will be miseducated for the rest of our lives forever and ever. Amen. But that's not the case. What they did is they found discoveries in their time, wrote it down. It survived throughout it survived throughout time for us to be able to read it today, to take it for what it's worth, get the merit off of the merit from which it sprang forth, apply it to today, but then also take that work and continue to go forward. Not running around in circles with it. Not running around in circles and worship the conclusions that they made then. That's not the scientific way. That's not the way that we honor our ancestors. We honor our ancestors by continuing to push forward with the discoveries that they found in the past. Okay, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, you found out about the double consciousness. Now, what can we do to break it? Dr. Carter G. Woodson, you spoke of miseducation and described it in a perfect way for the time that it was that you wrote it. But now it's for the burden is on future scholars to look at that, analyze it, internalize it in a sense, and then find out ways to break that miseducation loop as well. To reiterate the points that were made in these classics is that's not the way to honor our ancestors. That's not what they did it for. We're supposed to wrestle with the work. We're supposed to wrestle with the readings. We're supposed to challenge what we have read to see if it's the truth today as it was then. That's the actual purpose of the work. Society, people, we, us, have made taking weaker positions as like the sexier of the decisions to make. And that's unfortunate. To call things such as being on time whiteness. So what does that say about black folks? To say internalizing one's locus of control as whiteness, what does that say? What are you really saying about black folks? That we have to forever be at the whim of white people or some other kind of external source, whether it's institutions or whatever? The embracing of this coddling, the embracing of this infantilization is the destructive influence that is permeating through our minds. And it's not enough to just talk about it anymore. It's time to uproot it and cast it away for the lie and the farce that it is. It's like, I'm always down for a debate. I'm always down for discourse and all of that good stuff. But sometimes it gets to the point where it's not even worth it. Because if we're not talking about the means of destroying the imposter syndrome, and I'm arguing with you whether the imposter syndrome exists or doesn't exist, or whether I'm focusing too much on internal locus of control versus external locus of control, or whatever. Again, fall into that trap of distraction where actual work isn't being done. All we're doing is talking about the work and not applying anything. It's very easy to fall into that trap, and it's very sexy to fall into that trap because, again, many careers are made from that. We have entertainers. We don't have leaders. We don't have those that are willing to be wrong in the grander aspirations of trying to be right. I ain't gonna say we don't, because I exist, but just looking at the landscape in that sense, not many people really have a plan. And other than just being social media people, social media influencers. The Revolution, sponsored by Sprite. Check this out right here. This was who wrote this initially? This was on the Jungian Center for the Spiritual Sciences. What was this person's name? I want to give proper credit. I'll find it later, but it says this. Power also has stages. At the lowest level of consciousness is the stage of powerlessness. The level of the small child completely dependent on adults for his or her survival, without any measure of control over his or her environment. If one gets to the age of majority still living at this stage, he or she surely has an externalized locus of control. That's the infantilization that many of our people are dealing with right now. The second level is the power of association. At this stage, a person feels powerful through some close association to someone who is clearly powerful. The wife of a CEO of a huge organization, the aide to the president, the Pope's secretary. These people have power through their personal relationships to a person of power. This one right here is what you call the proximity to whiteness. That people call that. The third level of power is power by symbols. The symbols here are things like the corner office, the private jet, the chauffeured limousine, all prerequisites our society associates with persons of power and wealth. The billionaire of the Forbes magazine would be an example of people at this level of power. This is the level of power at which mainstream culture operates. I want to go into it more, but I don't want to give it all up either. But there are three higher levels of power, levels that we reach only through some event or experience that shifts us out of the conventional values and norms of our culture to allow us to re-perceive reality. For Al Gore, this event was the near-death experience of his son Albert. In the days in the hospital, unsure that his son would live or die, Gore realized that life was more than campaign victories, fame, and fortune. In my own life, the event was a series of dreams that led me to give up everything in my life and find a new, more authentic path. Such events lead to a redefining of what power means and bring us to the fourth level, power by reflection. In this reflecting process, we come to realize that true power is not something out there, in relationships with powerful people or a myriad of status symbols. It is all about in here, who I am, what I stand for, what my values are, who and what are dear to me. Beyond power by reflection is power by purpose, a level that derives from clear attunement to one's mission in life, one's purpose for being alive. At this stage, we know what we are meant to do. We have clarity of vision and concrete goals that give a compelling sense of direction and energy to our daily lives. That is the epitome of the internal locus of control. People that have a purpose. When you are a purposeless people, you don't have this. In the Bible, it says, a people without vision perish. All the same thing. So to internalize your locus of control is to relinquish those things that infantilize you, that keep you a child, i.e. running from responsibility. And responsibility is a scary thing because it makes one come to grips with the understanding that everything is on me. My successes and my failures, my good grades or bad grades, my financial standing, my weight, my appearance. Of course, there's outliers to that. But can we control the things that we can't control? So we can face the things that we can't control with more confidence. That's what it's all about right there. So, on another note, before I wrap up for this evening, studying for this creation of this book, I have so many cross references. So I was looking for some other books, but I ended up finding these. Cut Loose Your Stammering Tongue, Black Theology and the Slave Narrative. Classic book. From Rebellion to Revolution, Afro-American Revolts and the Making of the Modern World. White Devil, A True Story of War, Savagery, and Vengeance in Colonial America. The classic Black Skin, White Mask by Frantz Fanon. Sigmund Freud, Introductory Lectures of Psychoanalysis. Existentialism and Human Emotions by Jean-Paul Sartre. I always don't say his name. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. The Wrenching of the Earth, Frantz Fanon. Slave Religion, The Invisible Institution in Antebellum South. Black Culture, Black Consciousness by Lawrence Levine. Language and Responsibility by Noam Chomsky. Let's see what we got over here. We have a few anthologies on Africa, a couple of linguistic books, Language, Culture, and Society. And those are not even including the books that are in my book bag right now that I'm not going to get. And it also doesn't include all of the articles that I've read so far and those reference works. And that's getting me to the other reference works and other reference works. But this is things that I love, man. It's fun. This is fun to me. Trying to draw conclusions and stuff like that. And also I'm in the process of I think I got pretty much all of the responses that I'm going to get for this survey that I put out on the imposter syndrome. I wanted to collect data and see if I can synthesize a conclusion from the raw data that I processed. We got 45 respondents overall. I think from 1, 2, 3 or 4 different countries. United States, Nigeria, Italy, I think St. Lucia was the other one. And you know, I wanted to see what the imposter syndrome looked like for Black folks in Africa and the diaspora, see if there was a difference in that sense. And now that I pretty much have the data collected, I'm starting to synthesize it a little bit more. And, you know, I'll be back with more information on that. Or I might just do a live stream going through that data and you know, just doing it on the live stream so everybody can see. But I don't know, that's kind of intimate. Well, you know what, I can't do that because it has some identifying markers to it, and that was one of the agreements to keep it anonymous. But nevertheless, as things progress, you know, I'll reveal some of my findings. You know, for the imposter syndrome, how it affects Black librarians both in the diaspora and the motherland. I think that's going to be interesting. I'm excited to complete that and see where that leads me. And there we are. So let's see what time is it. It's 1:18 in the AM on my end over here. And I ain't gonna hold you, my eyelids getting mad heavy. So I'm gonna wrap it up for this evening. Thank you for listening to the random shards of thoughts that got captured at in the microphone at this particular time for the last 34 minutes. It's your brother, C. Fleming, the philosopher librarian and the people's librarian, Mowa Oludumare. Reach out to me. Be sure you like, subscribe, comment, and turn on that bell notification to always be alerted when I do go live, since it's sometimes so sporadic. Follow me on Instagram, The People's Librarian, and TikTok. excuse me, the Instagram is the People's Librarian 1963. Actually, either one of those will end up working, but I'm starting to use the 1963 page a little bit more. TikTok, the People's Librarian as well. Substack, the Philosopher's Study. Just reach out to me, man, and hopefully one day we'll link up and have a good conversation as well. I might start tiptoeing into bringing more guests on again to have riveting conversations. So if you're one of those people that have a riveting conversation on philosophy or history or anything of interest, reach out to me on any of those social media platforms and we'll see what we can do from there. And it's your brother, man. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm about to go give me some shut-eye because my eyes are already shut. And yeah. Peace and much love. Stay curious. Stay critical. Stay free. It's your brother. We'll holler at you next time.